Hey guys, welcome back to Magic TV. My name's Craig. It is 9 o'clock. It's time for another video, and I'm here with not one but two legends in the Magic community. Two people that have teamed up several times over the last couple of years to release some incredible projects, and now have teamed up to do something which is causing some press in the Magic community in both a good way and a bad way. And we're going to get into it. We're going to speak to them. We're going to find out exactly what's going on and why this is currently the most anticipated Kickstarter that I've seen for a long time. I am, of course, talking about the one and only Pete Turner, no stranger to this channel. Pete is I think I've said on this channel many times, probably the greatest mentalist in the world today, right now, as far as I'm concerned. And then, as well as Pigcake, he's bought his partner in crime, his brother from another mother, the one and only Orlando's own Pigcake. And between the two of them, they're here on Magic TV, posing, chatting, and talking all about this new Kickstarter. Boys, how you doing? You okay?
We're amazing. Thank you for having us. It's a pleasure to be on here. There's a couple of channels that we picked and said, you know what, these channels, they will dig deep. They'll ask us controversial questions. They don't mind talking about things that other people will avoid. And that's why I really wanted to come on. So thank you for having us on. Thank you for having us on. And you
Thank
know
you,
what?
Craig.
Unbelievably, we did a live launch and we got told by a couple of magic companies. I'm not going to name any names, but we got told by a couple of magic companies that we were making a mistake doing a Kickstarter, and it's not as easy as it looks, and you need to have an audience that's waiting there, and this, that, and the other. And then we funded in under 10 minutes. So, can't complain. But I'm really confident in the stuff that's on there, and that's going to shine through in the things that I'm saying. And just so we clear, just so everybody knows, the kit itself, the concept, design, and conception of the ideas and everything else, that came from me. Pigcake came and really helped me capture my vision, tightened up a few bits. If there anything that was slightly hand related or it came down to magic, he's taken his knowledge as a magician and he's almost consulted on this project to bring to you the best that it could be. Um, and also, we're going to be dealing with the postage in a very particular way, which is also interesting because we're going to try to work out a way. We don't know how yet, but we've got time to work this out. To get some to Pigcake in America, I'm going to take some in Britain, and we're going to have somebody in Europe taking them. And it means that we can avoid a lot of the import fees and import duties and everything else that's going on in the world right now by posting out from the relevant locations, because we're going to eat those fees on the top end. Right, that's what we're going to try to do. We're hoping that that sort of works out. But yeah, so of course, what you're talking about is the psychic survival kit.
And before we even start talking about the actual survival kit, the key thing here with the Kickstarter is this is not going to be available through magic shops. You're not going to be able to walk into your local magic shop and get this. This is not going to be a Murphy's item. This is the way to get this is to back the Kickstarter. Is that right? Is that fair to say?
That's it, yeah. And what you're doing is you're getting seats on the front end. So the idea that I had, I hate it when companies create these tier systems where what they do is they exclude certain people because they can only afford to get in at a sort of a bronze level or a silver level or a gold level. So what I said to Pigcake is, look, obviously there's a time to money ratio, and I've genuinely invested over a year of my life in this. The R&D on this has been ridiculous already from my side, and I've invested a lot of money in flying backwards and forwards to America, flying Pigcake backwards and forwards, renting RVs, paying expenses, paying camera guys, working with other people, editors, designers, and other things. There's a lot of money that's already gone in on the front end before the Kickstarter even started to go, right? And I got told that the idea had no wings, which is really interesting. I'm not going to say by whom, but there were a major marketing company in this game. They said, "Oh, we're really sorry. We don't want to help you with a Kickstarter because we don't feel it has wings." The Kickstarter went live. We had so many backers. They then jumped back in contact with us and said, "We'd love to market this." And we said, "No, thank you. Like we've already started the ball rolling and we're going to do it completely our way." So to answer your question, as of now, there's no plans to put this into any stores. That doesn't mean that if, let's say, for example, it's cheaper to order, I don't know, 1,000 kits than it is to order 500. Because sometimes, and you'll know this when you're producing stuff, you could produce 499 and the price will be ridiculous. You produce 501 and the price can be lower than it is for 499, right?
Yeah.
It's just the nature of producing more. So if we overproduce and we have some left over, They might be available at some point through some company. I don't know. I have no intention right now of going to those companies, bothering with those companies. The people that back it will be the first ones to receive it. And the way that I want to work the R&D so that everybody gets a better kit is the more backers that there are collectively, the more time I've got to invest in this and take away from my consultations, take away from my performances, take away from my traveling, and put into more R&D.
Mm.
There's certain amounts of engineering that I want. I was talking to you earlier on about one of the ideas that I had with the crystal that I know works, but it took me weeks to be able to just create one of them. And I want to find the right engineer to be able to do that. And what I want is I want a solid neodymium putting inside a crystal. Now I know you can already get magnetic stones, but they're just not right. It has to be a very particular type of magnet that gets put into the stones. And inside the pendulum, which is a bottle, I want a specific type of iron filing. Now, you might be asking yourself, well, why is that interesting? The reason it's interesting is because the moment that you put the pendulum over the top of the stone, it starts to spin and it starts to move,
Mm.
which is the natural movement of a pendulum in its natural state via ideomotor effect. And so why that's so good is if you had a spectator take a crystal, hide it in their hands behind their back, bring their hands out, all you need to do is hover the pendulum over the top, and if it started to spin, it'd look like it's supposed to look, but you know it were exactly in that hand, and you better figure it out every time. You don't have to worry about failed electronics. You don't have to worry about things falling apart, things not working, because via the nature of those two ingredients together, it works. And then
Yeah.
you're able to give it to a spectator, and a spectator would be able to do it because you just say to them, just concentrate, and it starts to spin, right? And so they're like little things that I want to spend more time on. And right now, yeah, there are several versions of Witch Hand on there that I talk about, different variants and ways to do this, mixing concepts and mixing certain elements. But I want everything to be as self-working as possible. And that's what I've strived for. And so that time's going to allow me to look into that. It's going to allow me to spend more time to invest in that. And that's not going to be done via a tier system. We all get the same thing. It's just going to be done by the collective of the community coming together to help everybody at every entry point get the same thing, but the best that it can be. And right now, even if it went out just exactly as it is, I'd be so proud. I
Mm.
genuinely, because the stuff inside here, I'm telling you, I traveled 4,000 miles on my trip in an RV. And of course, I performed in a lot of different destinations. And this literally gets reactions unlike any I've seen for the smallest amount of work. And I think that's what I've really taken away from this is understanding sometimes that we chase this big set of series of performances or routines, and sometimes it's better to strip back and people believe that you're the real deal and you have to fight them to tell them that you're not, than try to do the greatest thing ever to try to convince them that you are,
Mm.
which I think is really mad, right? It's a really crazy philosophy.
Well,
And just to add on that real quick is one of the things that is a point that keeps coming up about this is that the props essentially do a lot of the work for you. So just the props on their own merit, the crystals, the tarot cards, the pendulum, just by the merit of the properties of these actual props, people really have a different reaction to them than other standard mentalism effects. And it's interesting to see that as the guy looking, at Peter performing, the power of very little effort on his end, but this weird visceral reactions that we got consistently. They weren't just, once in a blue moon. These were reactions that you were getting with people in New Orleans, with people in Nashville, with people in Miami and Orlando and Sedona. And it's just consistent. And it's just the ease of the actual effort that you're putting that I just found completely astonishing.
Well, I think it's, like let's just to give a really simplified example of what Pigcake means. If you sit down in a bar and you're sat with a pack of cards, people come up and say, "Oh, show me a trick," or you get the cards out and they say, "I've seen this one. My granddad does card tricks." By keeping the same sized, poker-sized cards and changing the print to this, people all of a sudden then say, "Can you tell me my future?
mm.
Can you tell me something about me I don't know?" That's by changing the print on the face of the cards. So the performance has not changed. It could still be a crosscut. The performer's not changed. All that's happened is that these pieces of card have been run through a printer and they have a slightly different design on them. And the credibility factor from the off is completely different. The dynamic is different. I've spent years doing hypnosis and I've spent years playing with suggestion and asking people, to participate in all sorts of experiments where the hands will stick to stuff they can't speak and other things. And I genuinely have found just using a crystal and a couple of physiological effects, they can't let go of them. And that's because of their belief in the crystal. It's not about you anymore. So when it comes to hypnosis, normally it's about them believing in you to make the phenomenon happen. And if they don't believe in you or they doubt you in any way, shape, or form, there's a good chance that phenomenon's not going to happen. But in this, you divert the need for that based on the fact that the participant believes that this little stone, this little crystal, can heal them. If they lay these around the house, it'll stop them from having bad dreams. They've had rune readings. They've had, these readings where people look at their auras and stuff like that. And because they believe in the crystals, and you know that just by simply asking, have you ever played with these? Have you heard about these? And you give them one reading that's not even related to hypnosis. It's just a simple basic Q&A using the most basic technique, or even a one-card reading using a basic crosscut force. The percentage of the success rating of being able to have somebody not let go of that crystal goes up from, I'd say, about 75% into the high 90s. And also, not only that, and I've seen this, when they don't manage to be able to do that, when they're not able to do it, they don't blame you for not being able to hold on to the crystal. They turn inwards, they look inwards and blame themselves. It's a really weird phenomenon that I've experienced. I've been interested in this stuff for years, but just changing the makeup of the props and having somebody, performing I have this really simple routine on there that is, it's a pendulum emotion type routine. I can't remember what we titled it, but basically it's like an out of this world, but a very, very clean version with an addition at the beginning that I think is a really beautiful subtlety. Just by hovering the pendulum over the top of these cards, nobody were looking for a secret anymore. Nobody were trying to catch you out. So if you've ever been caught out doing a magic trick or a mentalism effect, or people are looking for the secrets, in this they wasn't, because them finding that positive emotion and separating it from the negative were proof to them that they were better at making decisions than they believed were possible. And it was just unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. But anyway, yeah. So that just quickly explains what Pigcake means.
Well, here's the interesting thing. I'm very curious to speak to you about this set, purely because I've been busy with FISM the last couple of weeks. I've not kind of been focusing on this stuff. So I don't really know much about the Kickstarter. I want to know everything. I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions. I'm not going to hold back.
That's fine.
First of all, I don't think we've quite mentioned it. The name of the Kickstarter is
The Psychic Survival Kit.
Psychic Survival Kit. Now, my first question is, before we talk about what's in the kit, what the digital content is, before we talk about any of that, you've done kits before with Illusionist on mind reading and sort of that kind of genre. So what made you decide to do another sort of kit that's also based around a Kickstarter? And was there a reason you kind of went down this route? You have done stuff to do with these sort of kits before, haven't you? What was the reasoning behind kind of going down this route?
So when I first joined Illusionist, I came in and they already had an idea to do a mind reading kit, a mind reading box, and they wanted to call it How to Read Minds. Now, when I joined the company, I had a look at the props and the ideas that they had, and I'm not saying I wasn't a fan of them, but a lot of the ideas that they had, they were like, oh, we definitely want to put this in there, and we definitely want to put that in there, and we definitely want to put this in there. And I managed to get them to compromise and change a few of the props. And then I had to work with what they'd already decided were going to be the constraints of the props that they had. So I had to design ideas for like the credit card, which we ended up calling fraud, the ESP cards, and I had to talk about my ESP routines. And then what I tried to do is bulk that very first kit out by sharing ideas that existed outside the props, because without sounding disrespectful, I wasn't necessarily happy with all the choice of the props in the first box. The first box, in my opinion, were a really great box because it allowed me to go back to foundational levels of teaching, provide basic props, but then I said, look, can I sign off on all of the props before they go out if you're going to put my name on this box? And I got told yes. And then the boxes came. I never got a chance to sign off on them. I got told about the ESP cards, which I think I saw them 2 weeks before the boxes went out. And I'm like, I do not like these ESP cards. They're see-through. Firstly, the ESP cards. How can a piece of card not be see-through, but you're giving me these plastic ESP cards and I can see straight through them, rendering them useless? So then I had to talk about The Enlightened Peak by Richard Bush. and how you could use that technique in this setting and the best way to see through these cards. And I had to make it a feature, and I had to make the best of a bad situation. But I didn't like the plastic coating. I didn't like the fact that they chose plastic. For me, if you're talking about ESP cards, I mean, these date back to the late 20s, 30s. Do you know what I mean? So these were used in North Carolina in a town called Durham, and they were called Zener cards, and they were used in these psychic tests. I believe it were like the 30s, the early 30s. But the cards were not see-through. The idea was somebody's going to hold one up and they're going to say what it is. And if the only thing that you've got to do is hold this card up and someone's got to guess what it is and they can see right through it, it renders it a complete waste of time, in my opinion. There are a couple of other things inside the box I wasn't really a fan of. Other people come up to me and said they liked them, but it wasn't the way that I wanted to do it. And it held me back and it handcuffed me to being able to only share things the way that they wanted me to share things.
Yeah.
Then after that came How to Control Minds. Now, How to Control Minds were never meant to be a box. It were never meant to be a kit. They were originally meant to be me. I had a certain amount of downloads I had to provide per year working at the country as per the contract. And I said to them, this is my idea. And at the time they said, I don't think this is going to work, as, you know, it's not going to really take off. And then they saw the content because they couldn't visualize it. When they saw it, they were like, oh, this would be great as a kit. We've done How to Read Minds, like 2 How to Control Minds. And then they took that and they ran with it, and it ended up having a pen in it and a dice. A pen that did nothing and a dice that did nothing. And then a behind the scenes book. And what happens is that people can't separate, because my name's on that box, what it is that I actually contributed to the box in terms of the makeup of it. And so I took the criticisms on the chin and it started to build up bit by bit. The criticisms that were made about the ESP cards, I totally agreed with. The criticisms that were made about the design of a couple of other things in the first box, I totally agreed with, like the USB key. Then it came to the How to Control Minds box, and nobody knew what to put inside there, and it was a waste of time putting in an iron pen and an iron dice, and then we moved on, right?
Yeah.
And so we moved on from that point, and I'd expressed my opinions, and this is not me talking bad about Illusionists, because I'm on really good terms with them at Illusionists, so I don't want anybody to think that, but I'm just being honest, and I hope this honesty rings true, so you'll understand when I make the next series of points about the box I have designed that I'm speaking from the same place.
Yeah.
So then it came to How to Read Minds 2. Now, at this point, I'd been fired from the company. So I actually got fired during the middle of producing How to Read Minds 2. And How to Read Minds 2 was almost a council of people adding their ideas into the mix. And then they picked the Spider Pen. And the Spider Pen were the biggest kick in the teeth for me when I worked at that company, because I hated it. What self-respecting mind reader is going to walk around with a plastic pen where you pull it out and a spider drops out the inside of it? I put that in the trailer in the new Psychic Survival Kit because I hated it that much. Mark Lemon designed that as a prank for Halloween. It was meant as a joke for kids on Halloween. And they were like, oh, well, you've got a wonderful force of a spider. Why don't you add that to it? And I tried to make the most of a bad situation. They had me wearing a T-shirt. They had me saying certain things. I was sunstroked. I was annoyed during the trailer. Like, I didn't believe in it at all. And if you look at the numbers on How to Read Minds 1, and then you look at the numbers on How to Control Minds, I'm not saying that I had any direct influence on that, but I really believed in the material on How to Control Minds. And look at the vast difference between how much that made on Kickstarter and how much How to Read Minds 2 made. And that was the one that I had more of a say in. I just didn't decide on the props that were in there, and I didn't like the props. The box looked great. I'd have changed the warning. This stuff really works on the outside of it, which I felt was cheesy. And then we get to that kit, and I just didn't want to be part of it. I have to say, though, Auburn Jones designed what I'd say is arguably the best designed box I've ever seen. Really beautiful with a ribbon. And again, I didn't like that you had to scratch off a little thing. And I had so many people message me and say, the code's expired. I can't access my downloads. My code's expired. I can't get into the content. Can you get me a number? And I'm like, look, I'm not working for Illusionist anymore. And I took such a kick in for that, such a kick in for the stuff inside there. The little electronic gimmick that came inside there. Mark Lemon made me one in his kitchen, and it were perfect. I could do it from 30 feet away. And then I receive the one that comes in the kit, because they obviously give me a kit to use, and it only worked 5 to 10 feet away. And it made a noise inside the box. And I'm like, how has the R&D got to this point where you've not seen this stuff before you've signed off on it? So there were a few things that I thought to myself is, look, if I ever got a chance to do this, how would I do it? Now, the honesty is, I wanted this to be a how to read minds style kit. But I thought to myself, well, wait a minute. I can't copy that. That's not mine to copy. I can't copy the how to control minds kit. Even though it's my design, it's not mine to copy, it's theirs. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to create one that made sense to me. And that's when I came up with the psychic survival kit. Like, look, if you were going to do this at the absolute limit that you could do this, what would be the top level that you could ever do it? And that's to do this in such a way that you be considered real. And so the tagline in the trailer is the only thing that you'll have to do after performing the stuff inside the psychic survival kit is convince people that you're not psychic after all. And I thought, well, it's interesting. How do I flip this? How do I make it so that instead of going into a performance having to fight for that credibility, having to fight for that feeling of being real, it's more interesting to have to convince them that you're not real and that you're not a psychic. And that was the approach that I took with this. So I thought, well, how can I meet in the middle, find something that magicians would love, mentalists would love, but at the same time, talk about my love for storytelling, my love for interesting plots, my love for making what you do, adding one or two sentences. And you've seen, Craig, you've seen me do this where I'll take something that we know that I do this. I take ideas that seem really simple on the forefront, and then what I do is I change them so that they're exponentially different. Take, in Dynamo is Dead, just jamming with Gregory Wilson, taking a regular magic square and turning it into a magic square on an American pool table with American pool balls where somebody calls a number out as it's broken, the camera never cuts, and the balls stop and it's not a gimmick table, and they just square the balls up, and the balls add up to that number in every single order from the break. Like little things like that, or thinking about doing an out of this world through a glass table, or thinking about doing a PK touches on somebody that has no arm, so they're experiencing phantom limb, and you see me drag their arm across the table and lift it up. These are all big concepts. And I wanted to sort of condense that and make it possible for everybody to do, whether they've got any experience whatsoever, so that they come across as interesting. So I didn't have to lie and say, you have to, I've never had to buy a drink, and I haven't bought a drink since. I've been honest about the fact in every single interview I've ever done. That's a character. It's a character that I played with lines that were fed to me. And I even made a joke in the trailer of this one that were a nod towards that, which were the one line that I knew people would pick at. And that was, why do magic tricks, or why do mere magic tricks and be considered a trickster when you collect the props inside the psychic survival kit, do the hard work for you, and you'll be considered to have godlike status? It were just a joke, right? It was just a little bit of a nod towards those two other kits. But it was that controversy and saying, look, like, we can all put this into our trailers, but how do we deliver on this?
Well, that's the thing, from a controversy point of view. Magicians, one of the things that, magicians are really good at arguing online about everything. It's probably their superpower, right? But one of the things that magicians will argue about more than anything else is psychics. And is it acceptable to, do cold reading? Is it acceptable for psychics to go out there and pretend that they can reach the dead and so on and so forth? And you're kind of leaning into that. You're kind of like saying, well, hang on a minute. This kit is going to give you the ability to go out there and put yourself out there as a psychic. You must have known you were going to get some backlash.
Of course we did. But then there's a mistake, I think, in the head of the people that are saying that stuff, and because they don't understand it without seeing it. And my point is this: look, one of the greatest things that I learned a long time ago, I can be ignorant towards the things that I think I won't like, and I never learn. Or I can read everything and decide, what do I love from this? And whichever way you slice it, it doesn't matter how you cut it. Anybody that's used an electronic impression device or an impression device of any kind, do you think that comes from the mentalism world? No, that comes from the psychic world. Anybody that's ever used a Q&A box or Q&As and slips, that comes from the psychic world. Anybody that's ever guessed the name that somebody's thinking of, that doesn't come from a mentalist, that comes from the psychic world. Anytime that anybody's delivered any philosophical answer to any question that anybody might ask, even just to divert their attention away from trying to deal with a situation where somebody's asked about a deceased loved one or a health issue, those philosophical answers, whether you like to admit it or not, come directly from the psychic world. right? And if you wanted to deep dive a little bit deeper and look at the esoteric meaning of a lot of stuff, cups and bowls, where do you think that comes from? Tarot, the chalice, and the wand, right? They're symbols that were adapted from the pluralization or the genderization of stuff in European languages. So all of this stuff is deep rooted, whether it's magic, whether it's mentalism, in a world that before ours were doing this and portraying it to be the real thing. And you look at the Houdini documentaries, and in the Houdini documentaries, one of the biggest things that Houdini tried to look at towards the back end of his life is whether psychics and mediums were real. You look at Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, he very much believed that that stuff were real, right? So it's always been an area of interest to magicians and mentalists. But what we've done over the years is we've gone, do you know what? I don't want to be able to contact the dead. I don't want to see all that they're doing. And we turn such a blind eye towards it that we don't take away the interesting lessons that those people have to offer. How can those people walk into a room and with just a microphone convince an entire room full of people that they're more credible than we are, and we're guessing specific bits of information? If you're telling me that you can't take the essence of that ambiguity and learn how to capitalize on it by sprinkling it into the work that you're already doing, then you're missing out on an entire genre there that I think is a beautiful genre. Imagine taking a musical instrument and going, do you know what? I'm just going to stop myself from playing any of the notes after these ones because those ones I don't agree with. The sound's too deep. And like there's a whole range, of palette of paints there. And what I've done is I've done the work for you so you can cut away the chaff and get straight to the wheat of the stuff that's actually usable and doesn't cross any ethical boundaries. And that's the thing, if you've ever wanted to do a basic Q&A, and if you don't know what Q&A is, it's basically somebody thinks of a question and then you give them an answer. You can say at the start of that, look, I don't want you to think about anybody that's passed away because I'm not a medium, and I don't want you to think of any health-related questions because I'm not a doctor. But if there's something that you want an answer to, or a question that's been burning in the back of your mind, or you feel like the weight of the world's on your shoulders, and you can sum it up in a sentence, feel free to ask that question. I guarantee to you that you'll have somebody at one point ask a question, and if you don't learn this stuff, you're not prepared for the answer. And that's it. It's like this stuff teaches you how to tactfully bring it back into the realms of magic and mentalism. But it teaches you how to use these props and show a side of this that you might not necessarily have seen. If you're a psychological illusionist, how you can point out, I'm going to show you some things. I just want you to look at them and give me your opinion. And then at the end of it, what better kick than to turn around and say, well, I just wanted to show you just how easy it is for psychics to manipulate you to do X, Y, and Z. There's ethical lines, and it's down to you not to cross them. And we talk about that in depth, on the kit. But at the end of the day, cold reading is a powerful. So cold reading, we do it all the time. In our everyday lives, we do it all the time. We can look at somebody and we know they're sad. And if any of us have spent any time with a partner for long enough, and you said to them, are you all right? And you get these dreaded 2 words, I'm fine. It's not, right? Mm-hmm. But that's cold reading. Those 2 words, I'm fine. Something's not right by somebody's demeanor, somebody's character. And so we use these things in everyday life. But what we don't do in performance, imagine that you're caught, you're coming out of a gig, you packed everything into your car, you have nothing in your pockets, nobody has their mobile phone. And I know it seems like an extreme situation, but somebody says to me, can you show me something? Instead of having to rely on a complex process that you have to learn and then recite in a proper genre or in the genre, imagine being able to deliver somebody one sentence or one paragraph that you can learn, just one, and they instantly believe that you're the real deal and you don't have to show them a trick. And you make connections with them in ways that you just can't with a packet of cards. And that's not to denounce card tricks or mentalism. I love card tricks, I love mentalism, I love card effects. But the makeup of this stuff, it makes you credible. So you're not crossing ethical lines because you're telling them what it is that you do. And and if I'm being really honest, Craig, look, I don't fall into the fallacy of the psychic where I start to do things where I believe I'm a psychic. But I could say that by learning this stuff, the amount of times I've taken guesses at things and found natural frameworks where I can afford to be able to say things that get washed away if they miss, which is another thing that psychics and mediums do, but accepted if they hit. And it's taken my mentalism to the next level. Because now I'm able to guess things that there's no way that I should know by using the framework of that. And I knew all this stuff before, and I've experimented with it before, and I've always sprinkled readings into everything that I do. And so just to finish this point, because I know I'm sort of going on now, but saying to somebody, when it's more interesting to know what somebody's not thinking than what they are, which sounds ridiculous, right? But if if I said to you, I want you to take this and I want you to write down the name of somebody that means something to you, you write it down, you fold it, and then I said a line or a sentence to you, and all of a sudden, this is something that's not ever been discussed. It's not something that's ever been talked about, but just one Barnum statement, one series of shotgun statements, or a rainbow ruse, which is all, it's technical stuff for stuff that doesn't matter. But I say it to you, I guarantee to you that person will be blown away more by that. And when you come to the name and you just sprinkle it in there, that's just the cherry on the cake that tells them, do you know what? How in your Pigcake, you've seen it, when we were doing. I saw on somebody's screensaver a picture of three children and the mum stood there, and I just waited, and they brought up their kid in natural conversation, and I said, oh, and I just took a guess. I'm like, oh, is that the it's not the youngest, is it? And they're like, yeah, how did you know that? I'm like, yeah, three of them. Blown away by that, absolutely blown away by just seeing something on a screensaver. But I teach you how to capitalize on that. I teach you what to look for to be able to throw out these statements. So it's not just a case of going, think of something, write it down, I'm going to tell you what it is. I show you little statements that you can make that even if, let's say, you miss the peak or the impression device fails or your prop fails, you're still going to be believed at the end of that without doing anything. And that's the beauty of psychics. What psychics have learned is what mentalists have not. And that's this. Everything they do is less difficult to do than a mentalist and seemingly more credible. And that's the area that I love. And why wouldn't I want a piece of that? Why wouldn't I want to take that and sprinkle it into my magic, sprinkle it into my mentalism? Why wouldn't I want people queuing up? And I've seen it in Orlando. I sit down, people are literally queuing up to come and to sit next to me, and they're arguing. A guy comes over, a skeptic. He runs away, won't come back to the table, and he's now betting his friends $100 that I'm the real deal. And I'm having to tell people, look, it's not psychic. I'm just genuinely trusting myself. And at the time, I didn't have to feel guilty about saying that because I was genuinely using some of the techniques in the set that allow you to give intuitive readings and make decisions and turn anything into an oracle. So hopefully that sort of answers that ethical question. There's no ethical lines crossed. I'm not pretending to be psychic. I don't believe in psychics personally. And I've just taken the best stuff that and the stuff that I've forgotten about and ignored, and I've capitalized on that to make my performances better. And I want to share that with you.
Yeah.
I was gonna quickly add, if I could, real quick.
By the way, this is the longest period I've seen you sit there and not talk. Are you feeling?
Yeah, I know. Usually I like to be the one that talks the most, but just in a sense of that, and to piggyback on that, literally, I would say and make an argument that every mentalist has delved into something psychic and something that has to do, whether connected a little bit or connected in some sense to the psychic world. And most magicians have as well. And to ignore that, you're really doing yourself a disservice, because it's opening up different possibilities, as Peter was saying, with less work to get more reactions and more visceral reactions. So if you're there sitting down thinking, oh, this might not be for me, trust me, you will find something in this kit that you will adapt and use and develop into something that's going to be great for you. And it's just, it doesn't make sense to ignore these things just because of the sort of negative connotation that psychics may have. Because as, again, Peter mentioned, we're not necessarily stepping over ethical lines. Everything was credible. And even in the trailer, when you see it, we genuinely tell people what we're doing are tricks, and they still believe in it. And we have to argue against it, which is just a crazy point considering the amount of effort that you put, which was minimal, and just the impact that you're getting. And it's just such a different reaction that you would get. So you're really sort of doing yourself a disservice if you're not really incorporating a lot of these techniques into it. And as Peter was saying too, not to beat a dead horse, but people were lining up. They were there watching him. And just that, you weren't doing anything. You were just taking out your props. You were just taking out the crystals and lining it up. I believe I was probably setting up a shot just to get like some B-roll. And people were coming up to you and going, what is this? What are you doing? Do you read people? Can you tell me stuff about me? And they were lining up, waiting for Peter to perform for them, which is just, I don't think that would happen with any other style of magic or mentalism or anything in that realm.
No.
And it were great to see. And another thing, just to round on your point off, is like, I think as magicians, mentalists, psychics, mediums, whatever, I think that it's weird that we believe we are what we say we are, which is really weird. And what I mean by that is, Craig, you could say till the cows come home and advertise yourself as a magician. But if the audience believe that you're, let's say you went to an event and people didn't know that you were booked to be there, and you went in, somebody says, "What is it you do?" And you said, "I'm a magician," and they believed you were a con artist that just wanted to steal their phone. And you said, "Oh no, I want to show you something. Can I just borrow your phone?" The more you try to convince them that you're a magician, the more you try to convince them that you're not a grifter, the more they believe that you're just long conning them to get stuff out of them. And the same could be said about mentalists. If they believe you're a magician, it doesn't matter how much you claim that you're reading body language or what lies you tell, they're going to believe you're a magician. And that's the same as if you're doing certain types of mentalism and you tell them this is not real. If they believe you are, it doesn't matter what you say, they're going to always believe you are. So your definition and your title, you can help shape their reality, but their perception is ultimately their reality. And you are exactly what they say you are at the end of the day. So in my opinion, like giving yourself the best attempt at painting the best picture that you can so that they can decipher what it is and you can lead them through why it's not really what they think it is, I think it's a better way to approach it. Instead of saying, no, no, this is everything I'm about to show you is fake and everything's this. So I'm about to show you something and I want you to look at it and tell me what you think. Do you know what I mean? And create these interesting plots and stories. Anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Craig.
No, no, no. It's fascinating. One thing that I totally can see there's no ethical boundaries crossed at all. Totally get that. I found it interesting, both listening to both of you. Pigcake, you said, "Hey, you're doing yourself a disservice if you don't adapt some of these techniques." And Pete, you said several times it's going to add credibility to your performance. As a mentalist, I can see that's the case, absolutely 100%. And to certain magicians, I can as well. But here's a thought. Like you showed me some of the footage before we started rolling, and I literally saw footage of people. You were saying to them, "What if I told you it was a trick?" And they were like, "Fuck off, it's not." Like over and over again, they were convinced that what you were doing is real. Now, earlier you mentioned Greg Wilson, and you talked about jamming with Greg Wilson. Greg's gone on record many, many times as saying he doesn't want people to feel that it's real at all. His whole character is that of a grifter. His whole character is that of a con artist. His whole character is that of, hey, I'm the charming cheat. I'm going to come in, I'm going to steal your stuff, and I'm going to do it with a smile on your face, on my face. Could somebody like Greg, I don't think he needs to have people convinced that they're real in order to have credibility. I don't think he's doing it.
No, no, but what better techniques to learn than to say to somebody, look how easy it is to convince you that what I'm doing is real when it's not. So the extremity works on both ends, right? And that's the beauty of it. It's like you can frame this up right at the beginning and say, what I'm about to show you is completely fake, but I'm going to show you how real it feels. And this will show you how easy it is to be conned. So even if you were just a magician that wanted to incorporate some of the tricks or wanted to incorporate some of the, the tarot stuff or even just the crystal stuff, you could swap the crystals out and you can use your own props and substitute them for coins. Notes. I talk about doing it with banknotes. I talk about serial divinations. I talk about basic billet switches that are redressed and reimagined. Bert Rees, there's a wonderful billet move on there that's shared by Bert Rees, and it were lost in the texts of the Jinx, and then it were briefly mentioned as an annotation in Life and Times of a Legend, but unless you dig deep, you're not going to find it, right? So I've reimagined it, and the instructions were terrible, and I've found ways to be able to convey it. So if you wanted to use that just as a card prediction, you could. That technique will allow you to switch things in and out. If you didn't want to use the pendulums, it might just be a bit of fun to text somebody's keys if there's a keychain or key ring, or you don't have to use the things if you don't want. They're inside the box. But the techniques that I share, I'd recommend using the stuff in the box, and it will allow you to do this stuff. But if you didn't want to use the crystals, I talk about doing this with banknotes so that it doesn't have to appear to be psychic. I talk about, if you forget the bag, how to do this with pockets. I talk about alternative methods for doing this with coins. I talk about how to do some of this stuff with keys. If you don't want to frame it up as a palm reading, but you want one spectator to guess what somebody else is thinking, you want to frame it up as a magic trick at a wedding for a couple, I talk about the psychological aspects of being able to do this and just removing the esoteric aspect of it. So you're getting the best of all worlds, really, because I'm not approaching this as a psychic. I'm approaching it as a magician that turned into a mentalist, then into a hypnotist, back to a mentalist, and I'm not claiming to be psychic. So like you said, Gregory Wilson, for example, he's the charming con man. What better way than to go through a series of cons? And imagine that you said, what's really interesting is that you only really need three things to con somebody. And then you started to talk about what the aim is. Maybe it's financial gain, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. And one of them is you need to be able to convince somebody that they're seeing something that they're not seeing. The second thing is you need to make them feel something so that you can convince them and get the better of their emotions. And this is usually done by either creating a romantic connection with the person or using those feelings. And let me show you how people do this. So you can frame this up however you want and still be the con man if you want. If you want to be the extreme exposer of psychics, look at Darren. He dedicated an entire 45 minutes in Miracles to saying, I'm not a psychic, but this is going to feel psychic, and then talking about that stuff. And we even do we go back to psychological subtleties, and we talk about the witch doctor effect. And the witch doctor effect is basically you're able to get somebody that's got a headache and that you cure them of their headache. And there's no trick to it. It's just if I may say, it's just a bullshit principle. But it's really interesting to look at that, to have somebody cure their own headache and then say to them, look, this is what I just did. It's a lie, right? But what your brain did is this, and it shows you the power of your own brain. And the next time somebody wants to convince you something, or the next time you want to convince yourself, all you have to do is X, Y, and Z. So, like you say, you don't need to, at the forefront of it, try to gain that credibility. You can decide how you play this. And that's the beauty of it. And I talk about the substitution of props. I share in there array of billet techniques I've never shared. I talk about my take on the Acidus Novus, which is different to everybody else's out there. It's so quick, so easy, that even if you don't know the Acidus Novus, you'll be able to do it. I talk about the Burt Reese move and how to do that. I talk about a beautiful piece that's good for weddings. If you wanted to do a display piece for weddings, where there's a series of billets already tented and laid out on a table, one of the couple writes the name down, folds it, they can tie it to a shoelace or the bottom of the pendulum. I've got a special clip that it clips onto. They hover it over the top of each piece of card and it spins over the top of one of them. And they find their partner's name amongst a series of other names. You start clean, you end clean. It's beautiful, right? It's like these techniques don't need to be presented as I'm a psychic, I'm a medium. That's the last thing. In fact, that's the very last thing that I want. I don't want people to sit down and do that. But what I do want is I want people to think about how they come across. I talk about how to create good plots. I talk about how to strip back. And we talked about this stuff before. Like one thing that I've shared it on a YouTube video today, but it's a little point, and I do it with everything, is how to turn two instructions into one. Mentalists have this weird way of going, can you just think of a celebrity for me? So, okay, I've got one. Okay, now can you close your eyes? Whereas thinking about all your instructions as a 2 to 1 and saying, can you think of a celebrity for me and let me know you have, by closing your eyes and keeping them closed. And really streamlining your performances. I look at that and I look how to make even your simple performances better by getting to the point quicker. So when you get to the point quicker, you can choose to add things or subtract things from your performance that make them in the environment that you're in, right? So to answer your question, it doesn't matter what industry you're in or where you are. Look, and let's be realistic. If you wanted to go out and pretend to be a psychic, that's none of my business. Do you know what I mean? That's none of my business. I'm not there to tell people that they shouldn't go out and pretend to be a psychic and make money from this stuff. Like, I was saying to Pigcake, I know Pigcake knows, I know Tyler Henry's consultants. I know because I've worked with Tyler Henry's consultants on certain things. And he portrays himself as a medium and arguably is one of the most notable mediums in America. And I could tell you it's all a facade, right? And he could sue me for saying that because there's no proof in the land that can prove that he is the real deal. But again, likewise, there's probably no proof that can, prove that he's not. But my point is that if somebody wanted to cross that ethical line, that's down to them. And I'm not here to stop somebody. If somebody just, look, another thing, and this is probably the weirdest thing that I'm ever going to say, and this is bordering on.
I don't believe that.
Yeah, no, it is, but I'm going to say it because this is a question that I got asked at Magic Live last year. And I think I told you about it. I was that almost weirded out by the question. But some guy come up to me and I said, what did you learn magic tricks for? And he said, look, he says, I'm going to be really honest. He says, when I were at school, girls never looked at me. They never paid attention. I got bullied. I never had a party trick. Everybody else seemed cool. I couldn't approach people. I couldn't talk to people. I didn't get into the dating scene till I was in my 20s. And this guy's a bit of an older guy, so I went to one of these old dating agencies where they punch stuff in, never found a match, and then started to learn magic tricks. And literally, within the first 6 weeks of him going out and doing these magic tricks, found the person that he's married to now. So he wasn't using it to creep on people, but he used it as a tool to be able to meet somebody. And I thought that were a really interesting perspective, that sometimes when we think about people, and I don't really like it, but people using magic tricks to meet potential partners, we see it as a little bit of a creepy thing. Do you know what I mean? But for him, he stayed with that one person for the rest of his life. And in that setting, it helped him find true love. And, you've got to remember that whether you're interested in this stuff or not, the amount of people that are interested in crystals, having a little bit of knowledge and something to talk about when you meet up with somebody is not such a bad thing. Do you know what I mean? You might potentially find the person that you're going to spend the rest of your life with. Do you know what I mean? Or to be able to have that feeling of knowing more than you do is never a bad thing. Of course, you've just got to be careful people don't dig a little bit deeper. But like I say, you've also got the cherry on top of the actual revelations that they'll never figure out.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So I don't want to make it sound like I'm saying, oh, buy this. I'm not doing that whole buy this kit and you'll find that yourself a partner. I'm not. I'm saying it's never a bad thing to understand what some people are interested in and have a conversation to talk about and show them something once they bring it up, But anyway, again, I hope I'm not rabbiting on.
No, you're not. It's fascinating. It really is absolutely fascinating. Let's just circle back to we've kind of skipped around the whole what's included within the kit. Let's kind of talk a little bit about that, because you mentioned how to control minds. The digital content was great, but the physical content in the box kind of sucked, let's be honest. What is included in the box? What made you decide to include the material in there that's actually included?
So the book, we decided on a book in there, and the reason we decided on a book is because you don't need to plug it into a computer. You don't need to take it and hope that you've got a cable that connects it. But inside the book, what you're going to find is it's almost a catalogue, but it's a catalogue of, you remember those old 80s X-ray specs and the way they describe, you could see through somebody's clothing. Look at your audience. We described each of the effects like that with a beautiful little animation. And then it says on the underneath of it, if you want to learn the secret of this, scan the QR code or visit this link. Now, at the beginning of this book, you can access all the performances and then explanations in one go. So it takes you straight to a page where you can look at all of them, or you can read through this beautiful book, and you can put one of the, the spare cards in there if you wanted as a bookmark through this book. And then what it'll enable you to do is access the content via your phone, or you can punch it into your computer. And now MacBooks are starting to recognize, and I know that some PCs are as well, the QR code, so you can hold it up and it'll take you to the page. Yep. So you're no longer needing to worry about being able to plug this in or dealing with it. And I think and there's also extra write-ups of things inside that little psychic handbook that are not shared in digital form. So you'll be able to read like a couple of extra annotations, paragraphs, stories and things that I found outside that are inside that book, so that you're definitely able to visit the digital content without having to worry whether you have the right system, whether you have to worry about updates, whether you have to worry about it breaking when you're plugging it in. You don't need to do any of that. So that was the first thing. We fixed the issues on all the digital cards, keys and other things. Next week it might not be a USB-C, it might not be USB. Next week it might be you scan your fingertip. Do you know what I mean? We don't know. This allows you to access it no matter what. So that was the first choice that we made, to just make sure that were almost, update proof. And then the first thing that we decided on were the tarot cards. 22 major arcana tarot cards, and we had a custom design from a designer. We had a friend of ours do some design work, which is really beautiful, and it's these things. And what that allows for, I don't know if you can see this, but I'm going to try to point it out. Let's say I went through the cards and I just picked one at random. I don't know what you can see on this camera, but in this top corner up here, as a speed reader, it says the word justice up here. And you can see this on the Kickstarter, a close-up of this. In person, you can see this. Through the quality of the screen with this big light blaring, it's very difficult. But we've got letters on the backs of these cards, and we've also changed the orientation of specific letters. So you can still read it as a speed read, but your spectator could look at that all day long and they'd never find anything. And the beauty that we've also done is put it in the same place, no matter the orientation of the card. I talk about how to properly get a peek, where to get a peek, how to not seemingly touch anything, look at anything and find it. If you don't know how to give a reading, we've baked in these QR codes into the top. So again, I don't know if you can see that, but what that allows you to do is it allows you to ask them to hold it up and say, I always keep a keepsake of every reading that I do. Do you mind if I just snap a photograph? And so they hold the card, you got to snap a photograph, and now the little yellow box pops up on your phone screen and it tells you the exact card they're holding without having to visit a link or do anything. And if you click on that, it takes you to a dedicated page where you don't have to try to decipher multiple cards, the exact bullet points needed to sail through that reading. So you can now in depth give them a reading and never be wrong based on the card. And guess what? The best bit for me is that after that's happened, if they notice the QR codes, which you can't see them unless you're looking for them, but let's say they do, you literally can give them the card, or they can choose one at random and they can scan it, and it'll take them to a page where they can buy ungimmicked tarot cards, ungimmicked crystals, ungimmicked pendulums, and they'll never be able to unpick any of your secrets, and they'll just assume that's a page they can go get this stuff. If they try to check out later on, it won't go through because it'll be sold out, or on back order or whatever. But we've designed all that and we thought about that system.
Well, just to be clear too, that we looked at a lot of legitimate tarot cards and what's out in the market before we decided on the back design. And the back designs vary from manufacturer to manufacturer, and a lot of them include QR codes. A lot of them include web
QR
links.
codes. They actually have them on,
Yeah.
so that's something that's important. But
And
their QR
yeah.
codes, QR codes don't take you to a reading of the card. They normally take you to a product page.
Yeah, to buy it through the website. And then the other part too of the speed reader system is that we kind of wanted to have a system that wasn't one of these, you have to decipher the code of Hammurabi in order to figure out the back design. We wanted just to be clear, just bam, there's the card. You could look at it in a fraction of a second and you move along. And Peter came up with that wonderful system with the QR code that I think is very, very novel for those people that might be apprehensive about readings, where you have essentially the crypt sheet. They're available for you on the page. And it's just a great little system. But some people did have questions about that because they thought that was the only system of reading on the card. No, we have that, and we have the speed reader system that works without the need for any sort of digital intervention. So I just wanted to make that
there is no digital intervention. If you don't want to use it, you don't have to take photographs, you don't have to scan with a phone. You can literally see the marking very clearly. And another thing that we eradicated from the cards is the Roman numerals. So these are Rider-Waite inspired, which won't matter to anybody that doesn't really know tarot. But Roman numerals were on the cards, and that stopped them to effectively be able to be used in a stack because you couldn't decipher the Roman numerals in a spread. So we came up with a series of stacked effects that are using the numbers in the cards, and they have numbers in the bottom corner, which, of course, if you've ever done any stack work, will allow you to do all sorts of stuff. The tarot cards, by their nature, are one-way designed, just how they are. So that means that it opens up all your one-way tricks that you already know within your card magic. A simple cross-cut on a one-card reading is enough to convince most people that you genuinely can do this, right? You don't need to learn a lot to be able to get the mileage out of it. But I talk about little simple things like the philosophy of taking what you know and how it's not weird anymore when you apply it. So, for example, there is and I want to point this out just in case people don't see any other interviews, but there is a little bit of crossover from other materials that I've released in the past, but not in this way. I've always expanded upon them, or I've always talked about why I've included them. And one of them is a routine called 21. Now, 21 is interesting because you have to deal 2 packets of cards down in 21 for the trick to end. Now, it doesn't really make sense with a deck of cards. What I want you to do is just deal down 2 packets, choose one of them, pick some up, put them to your chest and look. Whereas with tarot cards, they have a thing called a spread. And some people are dotted out everywhere. Some people's are clock shaped, some people's are crosses, some people's are 5 card. And by simply saying there's 22 cards there, these are the major arcana, you're going to deal down 11 cards here and 11 cards here, but it's got to be random. So mix them up. So as they're mixing them, you say, it's said that the sitter's not the person that finds the card, but the card is the card finds the sitter at that relevant moment in their life. So I want you to deal down 11 cards here and 11 here. These are going to represent your past and these are going to represent your present. And all you've got to do is decide if you want a reading from your past or your present. And you'll let me know just by picking up some of the cards from the relevant packet. So now these 2 packets make sense, right? But what's really nice about it is that all the tricks that were off the table maybe in the past where the procedures seemed a bit weird, actually, they're more in kin with this sort of stuff than cards, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that you can't take the techniques that we've taught and also do some card stuff. But there's also another thing about the tarot cards. You also get a series of other cards that come with these. And one of them is an astro card. And the Astro card allows you to deduce somebody's star sign and the question they're thinking of with no fishing. Now, before we came on this call, I showed you the reaction and how
Mhm.
quick the moment is, right? How quick that moment is. It's literally behind my back. Take that card, find your star sign, look at the question that appeals to you the most, and then put the card away and you're done. So it literally is quick. 10 seconds, 5 to 10 seconds. There's no fishing, no anagrams. They're seemingly never looking. It goes straight into their pocket, and you just turn around and you give them a quick reading. You don't even have to do the reading if you don't want. You can just hit them with a star sign. You can, if you don't want to do the star sign, you can hit them with a question. And now, without doing anything, you're doing a Q&A routine, having never done one before.
And no ambiguity either. Just to add on that little point, that usually, and not to frown on methods like Isabella Star, which is just a beautiful thing in and of itself, but there is some ambiguity when it comes to maybe one or two star signs. With this, it's their exact star sign each and every single time, and the question they're thinking of, and there's no sort of resorting to these classic principles of mentalism where you might have to go back and forth or think of this, repeat it over. No, it's clear. You get the star sign, you get the question, and that's it.
You get both questions, so you know both.
Yeah.
And there's no memory work.
And having seen the performance of this, it's completely impossible. It's completely and totally impossible. Like, I've seen you, Pete, many, many times walk into a bar and get someone's star sign. And it's the thing that everybody remembers. It's so personal to them. Everybody always remembers that. And this gives people the ability to be able to do this without having
to remember
the years of experience and memory work that you've gone through in the past. This one card that you can carry with you. I mean, honestly, I think that's just probably worth the price of the set alone. It's just
that's a beautiful little thing. And also, not only that, there's also another card in there that'll cue you into a lot of different things. So, for example, the stack work, it'll give you the crib for all the numbers on the cards. So when you read the reading, you know where it is. It'll show you what the star signs are. If you wanted to give more of a reading on the star signs, it'll tell you the questions that are tied to each star sign. So you don't need to remember a thing. It'll also give you the bullet points, the answers, right? So you're not remembering anything. Like, literally, it's inbuilt into this stack. It's inbuilt into this little stack. And also there's a card in there that'll allow you to get through your first performance, which sounds ridiculous. When you become seasoned or when you've performed for a long time, you don't often get the shakes, right? It's not something that many people get when they're in close-up or on stage or things like that. Or if you are on stage, what you tend to find, if you're going out to numerous people, you might be a little bit nervous before you go out. And I've said this in the past, that if you didn't, then you're not properly prepped. But as soon as you walk out, your intro script on stage is usually long enough to ride you through that little bit of nerves. And after you've said your first couple of words, you're ready to go into your performance. Yeah. For people that have not done this for a long time, I didn't get this. I didn't understand it. And I can promise you, this is not just me saying this. I used to sit there when someone would say, I'm really nervous about walking up to somebody. I'm really nervous about performing this. My hands just start to shake. And I'd think to myself, why? Like, what? And I take for granted how many years I've done this and that this is just normal to me. And that even in the worst case scenario, I could just bail myself out of pick a card trick or a one ahead or a simple coin trick or divert somebody's attention or whisper something over here or perform a piece of hypnosis there or wipe this away so nobody notices it. I take for granted that because of how long I've done it. But then when I played guitar pretty much my entire life. And when it comes to music, I'm a little bit savantish. I can pretty much play anything that I've heard once and I can jam with the best of them. But when it comes to singing, I was never a singer. So in my band years ago, I'd scream and shout, but I was never an articulate singer and I couldn't sing really well. And going to the first open mic night, I went there to sing a song that I learned. And I think I had one or two songs in my repertoire. And I turned up and I put my name down and I was shaking. I was petrified. And I sat in front of these people and I messed guitar notes up. I messed my music up because I was so scared about being able to sing right that in my head got the better of me.
Yeah.
And people came up to me afterwards, oh, you're amazing, you were wonderful, you were this. And I know I'm not, right? So they lied. But then when I went back a second time, I tightened the nuts and bolts a little bit. And now I go to these open mic nights and just, again, via the nature of doing this a few times, I've learned that people don't really care as much as what we care. They're not really analysing as much as what we analyse.
Mm.
But still, before I get on stage, when I'm singing, or I'm going to sing with my guitar, I'm still apprehensive. So I understand that when you're just learning this stuff, or you've been doing it a few weeks, or you're not used to talking in front of people, you're not, that you might get the shakes. So I've designed something for that. And it's something called Destiny. And it fits in line with what we were talking about earlier about whether we're exactly where we're meant to be in life. So I created a test for that. And the idea is that this one card gets placed on the table and you sit back and you say, I just want you to read that to yourself and follow what it asks. And this card details what it wants them to do, a series of simple instructions. They start to mix up the tarot cards. They go through a process, that involves personal details about them. And they arrive at one card that just must be for them. At that point in their life, it's the exact card that they need to see. And they turn it over and they look at it. And then this card here says, the last thing I want you to do is turn me over. They turn this over and it matches. So for the first few minutes, you don't need to do anything. Now, if you wanted to move into something like 21, which is also taught on the set, and you're still not quite over the shakes, they're blown away by what you do already and you've had to do nothing. They've done the trick on themselves, right? Sprinkle that with a few cold reading lines and you've drove your way through that nerve or the nerves, and now you're into the heat of the performance, and amazing, and that's what's really brilliant about this. There's a duplicate in there that comes into play when you talk about the bag, which we'll get into in a moment, but it allows you to, I've also tried to think about hybrid ways to use the props, so you can carry one of them on their own, but if you are carrying another one, how does this mix and match so you're getting the maximum out of the props that are inside the box? So, with the baked-in designs, the speed reader systems, the stack systems, the one-way systems, the self-working card tricks, the astrological revelations, the Q&A stuff, just built into this, and then being able to have the ability to be able to take the tricks that you've dismissed and learned over the years because you felt they were a little bit too procedural, and open them up to being completely believed when performing that simple stuff. All of a sudden, it's a brand new world, and you're not having to carry any more than that. Little things like I'm just throwing this out at the top of my head, but you take any card at any number. Again, going back to what I said earlier about how a certain card will find its way to you during a period of your life. And it said that one card will find its way to you each year of your life. So can you think of your younger years? Think about your heyday. Think about a year where you maybe had a question or something that you wanted answered that you never got. And each one of these cards represents 1 year from your life. And you start to give them the read, and you could do any tarot at any number. It's ridiculous, but it's a simple concept that all of a sudden takes on new form. Do you know what I mean? And then the second thing that I designed is that, okay, so we've got these. They're not quite the full size of a packet of cards. So I want to make up for that by designing some billets. Now, in the past, I've carried around blank billets, and I don't have any on my table. I normally have loads that I'm carrying around, but I carried around blank billets. And that's because when I'm performing socially, I don't want to give out my business card. A lot of the time, I don't want people contacting me. I don't want people adding me on social media. I don't really want people, when I'm going to these open mic nights, if I just do something that's quick, finding me and finding what it is that I do. Because then when I go and I'm there about the music, all they do is hound me to show them more effects or read them or show me this. And I'm not interested in that. Sometimes I just like to go and it's my getaway, my break.
Yeah.
And so when I was carrying blank billets around, I almost felt, if I'm really honest, a little bit guilty about carrying a stack of blank cards around because they just don't make sense. A business card, you can give them, it makes sense. If you open a little notepad and give them a piece of paper from that, it makes sense. If you took a napkin and you asked somebody to use eyeshadow and wrote on it, it makes sense. But the blank billet for me always just felt a little bit like this doesn't really appeal to me if I had a choice. So what I did is I started by creating the covers of a notepad that fit around a stack of billets. And it has a title on it that says heavy grade sketch paper, right? Or sketch card, or whatever the design is that we end up with. We've got so many different makings and titles. We're going to design on the best. We'll decide on the best one and that'll go on the front of it. But what it looks like is a sketch pad and you're literally using it as a notepad. The beauty is that the cribs for things that you don't want to forget are hidden in the back. It also allows you to switch billets in and out using the notepad. So if you were worried about open-handed switches or you're worried about switch, the notepad is the perfect perfect cover using similar things to the microphone switch to be able to switch billets in and out. It can also be used as an add a number pad. It can be used to tear these out and hand out if you wanted to give them out as billets and use them as your billets. There's out to lunch that you can easily build in there just by adding a black hair bubble onto the top of it, which I talk about, and I talk about ways to store these. You can put your tarot cards inside there if you wanted to carry your tarot around to protect them in the case. And if I get more time to R&D, this is something else. The more that, the value of the Kickstarter goes up, I want to try to build in there an impromptu impression device. That'd be the dream. But as of now, the materials needed for that and the R&D are outside the budget of what's needed. So I share a myriad of billet stuff. Like I said earlier, going back to Bert Reese's stuff, going back to the simple switches, the open-handed stuff, the one ahead. I talk about the fortune cookie and how you can give somebody a message and you can say to them, I want you right now. I know you feel you're not good at making decisions. Right now, I know that you feel like your decision making is not the best it could be. So if you don't mind, I'd like to try something with you. And then you write something down, you give them it. You say, right, I don't want you to open this now, so this won't work. I don't want you to open it tomorrow. I want you to wait until you feel in your heart that you should open this. And the moment you feel that, look at a clock. Look at that clock. Remember the time. When you open that piece of card, that time will be on the inside of it. And that's the proof that you'll need to know that you can make the greatest decisions that you've ever made in your life. And they take that piece of card away and it's right every single time. That's in there. Share the secret to that. And that one of the most talked about things that I ever did back on Jinx, and I never released the secret. So that's in there. I talk about burnt matches. I talk about souvenirs, and I talk about a myriad of techniques. There's a whole section on the one ahead, but talking about the justifications of the augmentation or the rearrangement of time.
Yeah.
And I literally discuss that stuff and how to make the one ahead more interesting. Like one of the things I shared on one of my YouTube videos that I don't expect everybody here to watch is there's an interesting version of Sam the Bellhop you can do using a one ahead. But instead of shuffling cards and telling a story as you turn them round, let's imagine that you know that a delivery van outside of a certain cafe pulls up at 3:15 every day and you know what it looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And at 3:10, you decide to go Groundhog Day and predict real life events. And so what you do is you write down on the first piece of card, a delivery van will pull up at exactly 3:15. It'll look like this. And you say, this is about to happen. You put it down. And all of a sudden you hear a waitress slip in the kitchen and the plates go everywhere. And you go, would you believe me if I told you I knew that were going to happen? Turn it over. And just as they're about to reach for it, you go, in fact, wait a second. Let me try to predict a few more things. And you write down the waitress. They sat down. And now whatever happens in the real world, you're working one ahead with the real world till it gets to 3:15. The van pulls up at 3:15 after you've wrote the last piece of card. And all you've got to do is move this one from the bottom to the top. And when you turn these round and you say, look, there's the lady, the waitress that dropped the dishes. There's the guy that were over at the flower shop with the red hat. This is this. And you're predicting real world events using a simple system that I share with you and simple means to turn small effects into big miracles.
That's ridiculously strong.
Yeah. Let me share another one with you. And this one's one that I intend to do on my own YouTube channel. But it's this. It's like, I don't really talk about pre-show work in there, but this would fit into that category. Like, let's say that I wanted to do a dart prediction. 3 darts players throw darts at a board. How do I predict, without having to switch in billets or out billets, exactly what those 3 players are going to throw before they ever throw them? How could I do that? Right? It's a great question, right? Yeah. So what I do, imagine I came up to you in pre-show and I said to you, are you any good at playing darts, Craig? And you go, nah, not really. And I say, okay, well, I've got a series of cards here with numbers on and different random actions, and I want you to choose one of them. And whatever it says is what I want you to aim for. And I force you a card that says miss the board. So now you have the easiest job in the world. You just have to throw your dart and it hits the wall. But now I know what the end of my closed loop is, right? So now imagine I force that to you and I put you in the 3rd position. The first player steps up. I write down miss the board and I bring the camera in to look at that and I write miss the board and I show it to the camera and I put it face down. Now you throw it and you get a 20. So I say, okay, next player, you stand up and I write down 20 for the next player, show it to the camera and place it down. Now you step up. And I write down they got double 16. So I write double 16 and I put this down. Now you're going to miss the board, which now closes my loop, right? So now I've successfully predicted all 3 dart throws, but now taking that piece of footage and moving that piece of footage in the edit to here, you can now see me showing writing 20, show me writing 16, show me writing miss the board. And that concept I'm not expecting anybody to do, but it's just the idea of deep diving into the way that I'm looking at that. And you might go, oh, that's a camera trick. I don't want to use that. But to the people in that room, if you ask them to explain their experience, that's exactly what they experienced in that room, and it'd match up with their sworn testimony when you portray that to everybody else. And everybody else could argue that didn't happen, and these would argue it did. And what I do is I look at ways to metaphorically, in a more condensed sense, rearrange time in the same way so that people definitely know that you wrote on this billet first, even when in fact you didn't. Then you wrote on this one, then you must have wrote on this one. And I talk about how to make those simple effects that we all know interesting. And so, the billet stuff there's some great stuff on there. And I'm not trying to sit here and go, oh, this is, I'm an ego maniac, this is the best stuff. I'm saying I poured my heart and soul into the billet stuff. That's in there. You've got the switch bag, which is a velvet drawstring bag that looks like this. And it holds your props. Not only does it hold your props, you can put this down and use it as the mat that you deal your tarot cards onto and do your tarot work on. You can hold all your props inside this if you wanted to carry them around and put them into your bag to keep them safe. Not only that, this allows you to perform Kurasuki style routines with the crystals inside the bag, because you can have one hidden out in the secret pocket. And the way that I want to R&D the strings in the bag is in a figure of 8. Now, I've not figured this out yet. Again, I'm saying I want to figure this stuff out, and it's going to be depending on the amount. Again, it's a community-backed project. The string's in a figure of 8. So if I pull this side, it opens this pocket, but if I pull this side, it closes it and opens this side. So I can literally hold on to the strings and say, oh, just open that for me, and the spectator will pull it and open and close the secret pockets for me. Imagine you don't know how to do a billet switch. So let's say that you're not good at open-handed switches. You don't know how to do the notepad switch. Everybody's wrote a piece of information down, and you say to somebody, look, just drop that in the bag for me. And you go, in fact, you know what? Take it back out and put your initials on it. And now you've swapped in the billet from the other side of the pocket. Now you've got their billet inside the bag and you're one ahead. So now you can collect everybody else's thoughts using the techniques I talked about, and you don't even need to use your hands. If you wanted to change the billets for banknotes, you could perform Visa Cabaret style routines at will. So you know exactly who's got what banknote and what position it's in. But not only that, they're borrowed notes. And because you're switching one of your notes in, you can now deduce the serial number on one of the bills. So now, just by using this little prop, if you don't want to use this, I talked to you about how you can switch stuff in and out using the notepad so you can either do it with this. If you don't like the look of this aesthetically, you can use the notepad. If you're in a bigger setting, the box itself is a Q&A billet switch box. So it switches billets in and out, and they drop billets in at the top of there. The top gets lifted off and carried off, and you've stolen out all the billets whilst the dummies are in the bottom. And then I dive into techniques. I consulted years ago for a guy, and on that set, I talked about coloured Post-it notes and how to be able to get a spectator to be the person that does the Q&A. Having never been psychic before, they can answer these questions perfectly, and they'll never, ever get it wrong. No matter what they say, they'll be right every single time. I deep dive into Q&A and how to use the old sneak thief techniques, the OG ones, in Q&A style. But not only that, if you're performing on one person, you can now do sneak thief on one person because they won ahead themselves without knowing they're doing that. Or you get the additional information by then taking them back and mixing them, and you can reveal hosts of information that seemingly nobody ever wrote down, nobody's ever thinking about, nobody ever talked about. And I talked to you about the plot that surrounds that. I talked to you about how to give Q&A readings and how to answer questions, even if nobody's wrote anything down. If somebody stopped you and asked you, you could answer instantly. I talked to you about how you can have one person think of a piece of advice they were given from their life and walk up to somebody in the audience or pick somebody at random and ask them to think of a question, and their answer, their piece of advice they were given in their life is for this person. And just to go back to, I don't want to say too much. There's so many effects, but just to go back to the tarot cards, the numbers in the bottom corner allow for the old wizard card trick. So you don't need to buy the Stranger app anymore. You don't need to talk about apps and buy apps. You could do this for real, and you can genuinely ring an actual friend, and you can use the old wizard phone trick in conjunction with the tarot cards, and you can have somebody on the other end of the phone reveal the exact tarot card this person's looking at, and they don't need to be turned over. And the reason they don't need to be turned over is because your crib sheet with the marking is going to tell you exactly what number that card is on the face of it, so you never need to look, and you never need to know yourself, and they know. It's one step extra from the original wizard trick. And if you're talking about over the phone, you can get somebody to FaceTime their friend and think of an object in their house, and that person thinks about moving the pendulum on this side of the screen, and the pendulum starts to move when they think about the appropriate room the object's in, and then they call out objects in that room and it spins on the object they're thinking of over FaceTime. You can have one person hold a pendulum and their friend stood there with their eyes closed, and the moment the pendulum starts to swing, the person starts to swing. When the pendulum starts to circle, this person circles, and when they let go of the pendulum in your hand, this person falls over into the arms of one of their friends. Like, all these things are like, I've thought about the visual and the plot and the premise, and I've had a year to do this. And this is going and dipping into extending upon things that I thought about for years and years and years. And I've come up with what I feel for me is one of the most interesting sets out there, because just the nature of looking at these things. I mean, look at them, that, you know, they look cool. Somebody asked me yesterday, oh, but aren't they just the crystals? Aren't they just crystals? I teach you how to do witch hand with the crystals. I teach you how to up the probability of doing hypnosis with the crystals. I teach you how to do bona fide routines like Kurasuke. I teach you how to get somebody else to hold one of the stones and deduce the exact stone they've got in the hand from a list of ones that they've got. I teach you how to be able to trade these out for keys and other items, so you know if it's a psychometry style routine, exactly what somebody's holding, how to give palm readings, how to do blindfold routines, how to get one person to read somebody else, how to, and this is my favorite piece of all, my absolute favorite piece, and I'd say arguably this is probably the best thing that I've come up with in years. You sit in a chair, you never say a word, somebody sits across from you, thinks of a question they want the answer to, and you just stare at them and they start crying. You never say anything, you don't say anything out loud, they sit, and afterwards they thank you for being able to get that off their chest. Now, if you don't want to use it in a Q&A context, you can still have a conversation and use this as the process in the middle of a piece of mind reading, and you say, look, we had a conversation there, you heard my voice, correct? I heard yours. This is what I was thinking of, and it shows the power of silence in the routine. Honestly, like some of the stuff you saw in the trailer, the person shaking, that's from the whispers. And I teach you how to give a whisper. They can think of any question, it's never written down, and there's one universal answer. And this is the beautiful bit. If you've ever seen the Universal Drawing by Banachek, if you don't know what the Universal Drawing is, I also have an update on that. The Universal Drawing in Psychological Subtleties was you'd ask somebody to think of a simple drawing or an image they could doodle or draw, and you'd make a drawing on a piece of paper, or you'd sketch something on it. And most of the time it'd resemble what they'd drawn, but I never found that it did. I found the ultimate universal drawing. So you could draw yours and say, oh, you know, I'm really struggling because the lines are a little bit hazy, but I'm going to draw this, and it matches most of the time. However, the universal answer matches every single time. They can think of any question they want, and with one whisper, they feel that you've told them a secret that there's no way that anybody could know, even their closest friends and relatives, and you never have to overstep the mark by actually talking to them about those things. Another thing that I teach is all the techniques over the years that even to mentalists make it seem like I know what they're thinking. And I don't really know it, but I use these ambiguous little sprinklings of language that suggest that I know. And the people go as far as at the end of the readings and the end of me giving these cold readings to turn around and say, I don't know how you knew that. There's no way you could have known that. And I never even said it out loud, but I teach you these little ambiguous statements that you can learn. Just one sentence, two sentences that you sprinkle in. They'll make it seem that you know and that you're all knowing without knowing a thing. And that's in there. The pendulum's inside there. And I teach you a series of these pendulum routines, you know. There's, like I said, so there's that, there's the notepad, there's the book, there's the tarot cards, there's the astro card, there's the self-reading card, there's the switch bag, you know, and then there's the box. You look, go online and try to find a Q&A switch box on its own. So go away if you're watching this and find a Q&A switch box and just look at the price of it. Look at the price of a Q&A switch box. You're getting that as the box that holds your props. You could put that on your mantelpiece with a design on the bottom, so it could just stand there as an ornament if you just want to display this stuff, or you're a collector of what it is that I do, or you can use it. If you don't want to use that, you can use the bag to carry your props, and there's the card mat. If you don't want to use that, you can just use the notepad and carry around the tarot cards and the billets inside there, and you'll have a full act in your pocket and it's protected. And the beauty is, everyone's wondering about the case for these. These look better aged. The more these are, the more these are battered, the better they look. They look aged, right? So I've done my best to think about every angle, from blindfold.
I mean, you've just blown me away with the amount of content. I mean, the only thing I can see realistically that's missing is a pen with a spider that jumps out of it. I mean,
You know what? I'm thinking about putting one in there now, Craig,
missed it. You've missed the boat.
as a homage to my past life. But yeah, I wrote down a list. This was the preliminary.
That list has genuinely
Well, this is the preliminary. I can't even speak today. This is your fault now, talking about this.
Preliminary.
But this is the preliminary list that I created for this stuff, and there's about 50 items on there, and that's not all of them. Do you know what I mean? That's not all of them. This is just the preliminary list. I talk about all sorts of stuff I've never talked about before. You know, the crystals, the crystal Quran, the old Quran principle. You remember that with you could do it with the bottle caps and stuff. You could do it with the crystals, but the spectators are the one that do it. They
I
rearrange.
was going to mention quickly too, just to kind of hanker on your point, quickly, emphasis, that just magicians and people that tend to think method wise, I would say unequivocally 99% of the content in this box is obtainable by anyone. It's pretty much self-working. Everything's easy. Everything's hands off. The couple things like the switches that might be like that Burt Reese switch, that might be a little bit difficult, requires a little bit of practice, but everything in here is been thought out methodically to be very, very easy to perform. So you don't really have to think about the method. It's just a presentation. And the other thing that you were saying as well earlier about the stuff that's in there, it's the list that you have right now that's if you put out the project, it'd be a great project. You're still adding to it. So you're still adding
to. And another thing that Pigcake just said there is in terms of the switch having a little bit of work. I thought about that. That's why I put the notepad in there to allow the cover to do that. That's why I put the switch in the bag in there. That's why there's a center tear in there that the spectator does. You don't do it. So instead of you doing the center tear, you let the spectator write their thoughts, show it to their friends. They fold it up and you say, you know what, in fact, destroy that. And they do the center tear for you. And you know exactly which piece still contains it, exactly where it is, by the nature of the way that they fold it. And they can only fold it one way because you've pre-folded the billet in a specific way that stops them from folding it in any other way. Little things like that. I've thought about practically everything. And I'm not saying for a second that there aren't things that later down the line, there are things that you might not enjoy, but there's so much content in there that even if you just pick the top 5 things that you loved from it and you looked at the props, try to find a tarot deck. Tarot decks sell for 30, 40 quid a deck. They're not marked. They don't have a baked-in QR system. They're not stacked. They don't have a one-way system. They don't have a range of effects that come with them. The Astro card on its own. You know, if you were to buy any star sign divination system on the market, you might pay 20 to 40 pounds and you have to learn a script. With this, you're getting that in there. Self-working effects, crystal effects, note effects, pendulum effects, switch bag effects, mobile phone effects, billet effects. And
let me ask you a question. Like, this is blowing my mind with how much material is on here. Like, you talked about the book and there's performances and explanations. How many hours of content is there on this thing?
So it's difficult to quantify for one reason. So most of the digital content is already shot and already edited. And we also added an additional documentary. So that's already I think that's about another hour and a bit long, where we actually broke into secret societies in Sedona and in New Orleans. And we learned actual secrets of faith healers, crystal healers, tarot readers. And we learned their techniques and we took the best stuff from them and we share these on the documentary. And it's almost like a little behind the scenes of the trip, you know, where the RV gets stuck and how we got into the trip in the first place. And we have also behind the scenes documentary, which is thrown together by Pigcake.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, to be clear, just because you're mentioning it a little bit without context, that for this project, we decided to embark on what is almost a 4,000-mile journey from Los Angeles all the way to my hometown in Miami. And throughout that, we stopped in Joshua Tree, we stopped in Sedona, we stopped in New Orleans, we stopped in Memphis, we stopped in Tennessee, and what's the other one? Nashville. I fell in love with Nashville. Down to St. Augustine, Orlando, and Miami. And in that time, we shot the vast majority of this project in terms of the performances. A lot of the explanations were shot on the field. And in that's where we discovered a lot of these sort of, you know, secrets of what psychics or tarot readers or these crystal healers are actually doing. And seeing them at work is actually quite interesting because, again, there's a lot of crossover, whether or not they like to believe it, with mentalism techniques. And that's what Peter likes to share in this project. It's a lot of techniques that are actually used by the people that we met in the course of this trip, these tarot readers in New Orleans that are, using not peaks per se, but they're using methods to gain advantages. These crystal healers that are using things like he mentioned earlier with the remedies of the witch doctor from Psychological Subtleties. They're using these techniques, and you try to condense it to as much as possible. It's hours of content, and it seems overwhelming, but again, Peter went to great lengths, and so did I, to make it palatable and make it easy to understand and easy to digest. You were talking yesterday, I believe, about the way you broke down the sections. So, you start with the basics. You start with, if somebody wants the too long, don't want to read, you have that. And then you go into more detail in further videos. And it's just everything is as clear as it could be, which is another thing as a camera guy, just watching this, it was kind of astonishing to take it back and have all this content in my face. But it's really a wonderful project, and I'm proud, and I'm sure Peter is proud with how it's come through. And just the Kickstarter itself, we funded in 10 minutes, just with the initial goal, which is
in under 10 minutes. So, but just to go back to what you said, Pigcake, well, the way we explained it was we give the basic bare bones explanation, because everybody says I can talk the glass eye out of a dead dog, which I'm happy about. I give the bare bones explanation. So if you just want to watch that and go away, you can. And then I go a little bit more in depth with more psychological techniques. And then I further go into that, so that if you are a beginner and you just want to learn the basics, you can. If you're intermediate, you can. If you're expert, you can. And if you just want to learn one tarot routine, I start out with the basics. And as the list goes down of tarot effects, they become a little bit more involved. So one of them might involve you having to shuffle. Like, I'm not saying like they're so involved that you have to learn sleight of hand and be able to do cardistry, none of that. But the same with everything, and that's the way I try to do it, to make it so it's digestible. And if you wanted to learn one tarot effect, one crystal effect, you wanted to learn one reading effect, one blindfold, there's sections on everything. And now, for the most part, the digital content is shot. The documentary is shot. We are going to be doing a version. If I go back to, so my aim is to go to Magic Live. If I go over to Magic Live, I will go across to California, take some meetings, and then go across to Miami. If I go across to Miami, I will shoot there the behind the scenes documentary. If I don't manage to make that trip for whatever reason, then we're going to do a behind the scenes, just the laughs and the funs and things that went wrong, and his feelings versus mine, and how much of a pain in the ass he is, and
oh yeah, me. Okay, buddy. But
Yeah.
and also the documentary, it also has explanations of stuff. So it's not just a documentary that for
But
vanity.
it's not like the How to Control Minds documentary. You don't have to watch the whole documentary to see the performances and explanations. They're all individually labeled. And I've done my best to get as many performances as I can. And I even said to Pigcake that one thing that I'm going to do, because I've got some time whilst this is in development, to go out and get more. Like I'll literally go and get more. I'm going to try to put together a parlor-sized performance if I can, so that I can go and try to do a little parlor show where I piece together some of this material, so that and that's what I want. I want to do that. And then there's director's cuts. Sometimes the material that was shared on here, it were a little bit personal, like some questions, even though we said don't ask this type of question, it were a little bit personal. So what we do is a director's cut, where we protect the privacy of the person that we give the reading for, answer the question to, but we show you the exact technique that we're using, when we're using it, negate the question because it doesn't matter. Here's the answer, here's the reaction, and this is how we got that reaction. So I do director's cuts of things that in the real world, I'll tell you this, and this is a fact, I'd have cut it out. It'd just hit the cutting room floor and you'd have never seen it. Not because the performance is not good, that you just see by the reaction how good the performance is. It's because some people really dug deep when they ask questions. But I also talk about, I talk about mitigating that, how to round that, how to swerve around that, so you don't have to feel the uncomfortability of watching somebody cry. But you can never control when that's going to happen. So the biggest problem in the world is you can start doing Q&A and you can learn it from any source you want, any old book. And then the problem is that when somebody asks you a bit of a deep question, somebody starts to cry, you don't know how to deal with it.
Yeah.
And so I talked to you about how to get through that, how to deal with it, how to make yourself seem personable, how to not be vacant when that's happening, how to not be intrusive, and how to be tactful. And all of these things, like there's a lot in there, like I say, but it's not overwhelming. It's not like you have to learn mounds and mounds and mounds and mounds. I teach you how to just to pick what you need and learn what you need and go out there and, again, like I say, I have to convince people that you're not the real deal. So I'm really proud, and it's on Kickstarter. And if you want to be a part of this, look, and you want to help it grow, and you want to show that, look, we don't need these, and I don't mean to be disrespectful to any magic company, but we don't need these big magic companies to produce what we want. Decent props. And also, if the money's right on there, I also want to spend some time visiting and documenting, going to the factories and going to see these places that make this stuff, where they produce it. I'd love to see that, right? I'd love to see it. So, but it all just depends. It is, I've taken so much time out. I've invested so much time. I've tried to make this as best as I can. I'm honestly blown away by how much we've managed to get done. Pigcake's become a better filmmaker as a result of this. Like it's been.
Oh, thank you. Bless you. Bless you.
He's learning. He's getting there. But no, in all seriousness, like, we were fun. Do you know what I mean? And you get to see the trials and tribulations. Not everything was smooth. Not everything were perfect. You get to see me learning some of these techniques. Learning some of the stuff that I might have found uncomfortable. Some of the things that I had to think about and how to approach. And if you see me doing it as somebody that knows about this stuff, you can see how I quickly learned this stuff, and I show you the mistakes I made. I don't mind that. There's no, you know what I mean? It's texture. It's showing you everything.
Yeah.
So yeah, hopefully that answers some of the questions you got.
How much is the Kickstarter?
So right now, depends how long it's going to take for you to put this video up, Craig.
I'm going to get it up as soon as possible for you.
Okay, so right now it's in the early bird special.
And when's the early bird running till?
Pigcake a bit to answer that. He's the logistics man.
Well, we were considering having an early bird for about a week and a half, and then we're going to bring up the price to 150. But also, along with the kit, we're not having stretch goals. The stretch goal is what Peter was talking about earlier, which are sort of unofficial. Sort of when we get the certain funds to do certain things, like adding stuff to the notepad. The crystals is something that we're still working on as far as adding stuff to that. So they're not really official stretch goals, but we do have tiers in the sense that you could get the box. You could also get a cold reading companion, which is going to aid in a lot of the cold reading techniques that you would need for the actual project itself. It's going to be put in book form. Also, we include a tier that includes your Grail project that we shot wonderfully, which almost killed me, and Peter loves it every time I mention that. We also include a great project by Reese Goodley called The Journey, which is sort of a tell-all about specific tarot readings. So he's a tarot reader by profession, and he sort of hankered down and is sharing the techniques, and also talks to a lot of people in that space, and that's included as a tier. So we also have a tier that's just in case you've bought the Grail. Everything's included minus the Grail. So we've kind of had a little bit of a comprehensive look as to all the tiers available, just to sort of hit everybody. And also we put it so that if you want to have it as a payment plan, you could. So you could potentially get the Kickstarter on a payment plan if you don't necessarily want to drop all of it at once. We've also thought for that particular avenue.
There's something I want to say is that the cold reading companion, you don't need the cold reading companion to do the stuff inside the box. That's important to know. Yeah. So the cold reader's companion, or the cold reading companion, is a book that perfectly complements the stuff inside the box. So if you just wanted to go in cold, I talk to you about brand new Oracle systems. I revisit archaic Oracle systems. I talk about the lines that you can use to make it seem like you know something. I talk about the ways to construct your own cold readings. I talk about the difference between that warm reading and hot reading, and how to get information without seemingly getting information. And basically how to deliver successful readings every single time if you've never done this stuff before. I've never seen a book that's as comprehensive on the subject. That doesn't mean there isn't one out there. It just means I haven't seen it. But I feel that I've cut through, again, the chaff to get to the wheat. And there's some really, really strong stuff in there. And that's going to be a book that'll be printed, that'll come alongside the kit as one of the tiers.
I completely forgot about the Beyond the Veil. So Beyond the Veil is an additional video that is part of the tier system, where Peter's going to interview people that are actually in the space, people that are have considered themselves psychics, that are popular. You keep teasing to one person in particular that people are going to enjoy very much. You don't want to say the name of the individual, but
arguably the most famous mentalist that portrayed themselves as a psychic of this round.
Wow. Yeah, so, and that's also part of the package deal, where you're getting access to that as well, which is another comprehensive look with interviews and techniques shared by those people. So that's also part of it. I completely glossed over that, but it's very comprehensive.
That's amazing. I mean,
But
the amount of value that you've included in this set is nothing short of staggering. Like, it really is, especially the amount of time and effort you would have gone into this. Like, the amount of time and effort that's gone into this is, yeah, mind blowing. Absolutely mind blowing.
Yeah, 22-hour days in Peter's house with cups of tea and terrible instant coffee and Diet Coke went into this. And also the glorious RV trip that was with the best quality RV we could possibly get for the money, which was falling apart. Peter had to be under it. I believe no more than 6 times you were underneath the car fixing various things that have fallen off in different parts of the United States. So it was quite an adventure to film this, but again, same with the Grail. When we were out there shooting that, it's you go through the trials and tribulations, you go through the arguments that we've had, and luckily we've had less arguments as the projects have come to fruition. But the end result is beautiful, and the end result is something that I'm very proud of for this. I'm sure Peter is the namesake for this. He's ultimately very, very proud. But just in the back end, it's mind blowing, and I'm ecstatic to have been even a small piece of this.
And just to mention one last thing on the Grail, if you don't know what the Grail is, it's the definitive project when it comes to propless mentalism, and that's why I complimented this so well. There's people like Lewis Laval, Fedon Billick, there's Rhys Goodley's on there, there's Kenton Nepper's on there. There's a load of people that are on there that share their books, they share their ideas, they share their thoughts on the subject. I share my entire comprehensive list of psychological type mentalism, talk about how to do like free will principles, we nothing, which hand principles, guess words, drawings, names, images. It complements this so perfectly. It is the biggest project that's ever been created on the subject, and that is one of the tiers that's on here, and that was something. There's limited numbers of those left because they're just the ones that were left from before. And actually what had happened was a magic shop had ordered a number of them, and then when it came to it, I decided I didn't want to work with them, so I just took that number back and kept it, knowing that it'd go in this. And so that's those, and there are a specific number of those left. But like I say, Pigcake's right. I don't think I've ever been as proud. It's the hardest that I've worked to put something together, and it's literally broke my back, and having to buy cinema cameras and everything else. I knew I wanted to do it. It's given me the kick up the backside that I needed to be able to do something like this. But I think if this goes well and it goes right, I'm pretty confident that this is just the start of amazing things. Do you know what I mean? It's the start of amazing things, to do things right, the right way, the way that we've all wanted it done for a long time, and not have to deal with the arguments of companies, not have to deal with being let down by companies, to produce good, solid material that's top quality, sounds great, looks great, is easy to digest, and it's good quality props and good quality material. So, hopefully that answers the questions. If there's anything else you want to ask, I'm more than...
I mean, I'm blown away. Genuinely, I'm blown away. I came into this interview with absolutely no interest in this kit at all. Like, I would rather just not. But and I'm not just saying this, I've come out of this interview desperately wanting to go and jump on the Kickstarter because and I think that I'm the perfect example of a type of magician that wouldn't want this sort of kit, which is why I kind of had in my head I don't really need it. But I think with just some of the stuff that you've described, I think I'd be stupid not to, especially as I love your material anyway. But I mean, I think you're right. I think that this is for everybody. And
definitely something in there for everybody, and like I say, a lot of this is transferable skill.
Yeah.
Whether you're using it to press a point, whether you're a con man, whether you want to be believed, whether you just want to be able to create deep connections, whether you just want to show tricks, it really doesn't make a difference. Like everything, every angle's covered in here. And don't be put off by the word psychic, because that's not what this is about. Just in your head, when you say that to yourself, remember, I couldn't call this how to read minds. I couldn't call this how to read minds too. I couldn't call this how to control minds. Good titles were already taken, and this has that flair to it on the periphery, but this is really a continuation of those if they were done my way.
Yeah, You should call it "How to Fuck People's Heads Up."
So we should have created a good acronym for that, shouldn't
What we had a list of names. We had a list of like a bunch of names that you went, and then we woke up in a car park at McDonald's, and you're like, I got it, dude. Psychic survival kit. I'm like, you know what? Fuck yeah, that's
Yeah,
it.
we? Do you know what led me to that? So I don't know if you've ever been to Sedona, Craig, but in Sedona they deter you from putting up yellow signs. And because apparently they cause distress. I don't know what the exact law is, but I read somewhere that at one point it were illegal to put up yellow signs because it didn't bode well with this psychic area. So the McDonald's M in Sedona is the only blue McDonald's M in the world, and people literally travel from all around America and stand in queue to take photographs underneath the blue McDonald's sign.
Green. It was a green one.
Green, okay, the
Yeah.
green McDonald's sign. And so as soon as I climbed out of the RV, the idea hit me. And now I'm not claiming that it was divine intervention, but those green arches certainly had something to do with
yeah. And very quickly, when is the Kickstarter until? When do people? Pigcake, you can probably answer this. When does it stop, close?
Yeah, so we started the Kickstarter, I believe, 3 days ago, and it's gone up to the time of this writing. So far, we're up to let me just take a quick look. But the actual campaign is going to end on August the 24th. So right now we're up to 65K on it, which is wonderful. Superseded our goal by a very, very substantial percentage. And again, we're trying to keep adding to it. It's not just something that we're trying to hanker in. We're trying to keep adding to it in terms of value for the person, especially value for what they're paying, and add to the actual individual props that they're receiving. So the campaign is going to end on in a month, essentially, and till then, we're going to be trying to push this as much as we can, just because it could be the beginning of something wonderful, and further evidence that if there's a will, there's a way. And it's just me and Pete, and his techniques, and just my ham-fisted camera work, but it came together, I think, very wonderfully, and I'm again just so proud of what we're able to shoot. And again, it's just funny seeing the quality of those, like just the drone shots and the shots in the desert. It looks like a movie, and that was
Yeah.
the insistence against my will, because I typically am a running gun guy. So when it comes to my style of filming, I would say it's guerrilla. But Peter really sort of hankered in on wanting to use these cinema cameras and wanting to shoot this in a way that looks like it could be a production that's with way more than what we had, which is just two people in an RV with a bunch of, very basic camera equipment cramped in. And we were able to do this, and I think it's great. I think I can't wait for people to actually get the end result of that work.
So one last question. Obviously, we've had How to Read Minds, How to Read Minds 2, How to Control Minds. This is now the start of, something. Will, assuming this goes well, and it already has, let's be honest, it's already overfunded. Will we be seeing a follow-up kit at some point in the future?
So this is an interesting thing. So I don't think people really realize, and I know that you know this, Craig, because we've sat and talked. I wake up morning to night and I'm just writing ideas. I've always got a million and one ideas. In terms of subject matter, I can look at something and I'll have 50 ideas in a second. My brain's just on fire a lot of the time. And on a good day, like I have good ideas. But I was talking to Lloyd earlier, and I told him about the idea that I wanted to have to do this kit. So I had initially there were a kit that were going to come before this one, but I couldn't do it. There were no way that I could do it because I don't have the resources, I don't have the connections, I don't have the people that can make it. I don't have the people to get in contact with to be able to do that. If this goes well, what that's going to do is going to open up those doors to be able to get that kit produced at some point in the future. But that one, I think, is out of everyone that could have ever possibly been conceived, it is the most universal one of all. And I've already got what I want the trailer to look like. I've already got the idea of what I want it to be. I told it to Pigcake, and the very first time I told it to Pigcake, he goes, "No." And then I explained the trailer to him, and he was like,
Yeah,
"That's the greatest idea for one of these kits."
fuck yeah, dude.
Nobody has ever done it before. Not psychic, it's not mediumistic, it's not magic, it's not mentalism, nothing related to any of those subjects, yet it encompasses all of them. And so if it goes well, then and people love it and it's well received, we're just going to get better and we're going to get better and better. But there's one thing that is for sure is that, look, out of all of this, there's one thing that I'm taking away from it, and it's working in television as long as I have, working with filmmakers as long as I have, learning to direct, learning to understand cameras, and now I've even had a hand, and I'm not talking a hand in terms of like full on, like I've been in the background of as a consultant on actual films and movies. The way that I look at filming things, the way that I understand how things are filmed now, and the secret sauce is probably the right word to making them look like movies. My productions are just going to be next level within the next 12 months, and that's, I'm building a world now where that's a possibility. I'm building the right infrastructure to be able to do that, and that's my aim. I'm not, I don't know where it's going to take me, what's going to be coming out, but I do know that the production quality of everything is going to just be getting better and better and better. So yeah, the idea is we'll see. We'll see. If this goes the way that I think it's going to go, then I think that I'll have the right contacts. But I've just got to make those contacts, and this is going to allow me to do that.
Wow. So a lot coming up on the horizon. That is absolutely amazing. That is fantastic. And people can back this. They can back it right now. The early bird, by the time you watch this, the early bird will still be running. But I don't know how long for. So you want to kind of jump on that straight away. There will be a link in the description down below to the Kickstarter, so you can go straight there. I mean, I came in, like I said, I came into this interview wanting to be a bit negative about it because, like, you know, I'm not really into psychic stuff myself. It's not really something I do. But I think yeah, I'm really impressed with what you guys have put together here. Really, really impressed with the content. Just I'm genuinely overwhelmed and blown away by the amount of stuff that you put in there. And I'm used to you, Pete. We've worked on projects before, and I know that I can put you in a room and you can come up with 1,000 ideas in 5 minutes and then just talk for all day about them. But I mean, it's just you've over delivered. Like
Thank
if
you for that.
anything, like you've under promised and over delivered on this one, both of you.
And we've not tried to put in there the hype that has been another criticism of the last ones. We're not promising free drinks. We're not promising that you're going to go out and you're going to find somebody. We're not promising that you're going to be able to use this to be the talk of the town. You know what I mean? We're not doing that stuff in the trailer. I mean, we might nod towards it in the shorts or joke about it to try to get it in front of people, but we're not really interested in the controversy. We're trying to be as open as we can. We're not hiding what's in there. We're not hiding what it's about. We're answering as many questions as we can. We're talking about who it's for. We're trying to be an open book on this because one thing that's, I think, driven sales before is the ambiguity of what you're going to get. And I think that's backwards. I think it's nice for people to know exactly what they're going to get and exactly what they're going to expect or what they can expect. And then when they get that, they see it's exactly what we say it is.
Yeah, and I think there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be very, very impressed. I can't wait to get one. I'm going to be jumping on as soon as I finish chatting to you guys. I'm going to go and
Yes.
put my order in. But look, I really appreciate you coming on the channel. You both know that anytime you want to come on Magic TV, you just have to ask. This is your platform to use as you see fit. Because every time you both come on, it's always fun. It's always exciting. You're always sharing something unique. You're always getting me very excited. And it's the first time I've had both of you on together. And I know that you guys are a match made in heaven. Well, look at you, Pigcake. This is the
Oh,
2025 version of the Mega Powers. We have the Mega Powers right here.
Mega
we do.
powers collide. That's
We
what
have,
we're.
we have Adam, look, listen, we're not a match made in heaven. He's the burning man. When you get a thorn stuck in your foot and you never get rid of it,
Look
you
at
don't
this.
know how to live
Look
with
at
it.
that, buddy. What is that? What is that right there? That lovely scar. All right.
That's
That's
that's you cutting corners.
I think to be clear, I almost died when Peter slammed me through a table for the grail.
Oh,
I suggested it. I suggested it. All right. So I want that to be very clear. I suggested the spot. Peter slammed me through a table and I almost died. But you know what? It was fucking worth it. It was fucking worth it because it was a sick video.
right, go on. That's it. We'll leave there. We'll leave out on that.
Guys, go buy the Kickstarter. Go support Pete. Go support Pigcake. I'll see you again soon. The link's in the description down below. Pigcake, Pete,
Thank you,
thanks very
everybody.
much.
Take
Thank
care.
you,
You guys are
brother.
awesome. Guys, leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think. More importantly, let me know if you're excited about this Kickstarter. More importantly, let me know if you've backed it already. If you haven't backed it, why not? If you are going to back it, let me know down below. If you've got questions for Pete or Pigcake, let them know down below. And yeah, I will see you again soon. Thank you very much for watching. On behalf of Pete Turner, on behalf of Pigcake, my name's Craig, and this is Magic TV.